what you don't know can actually kill you. It's true. I'm going to be talking about health literacy today, and poor health literacy is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality estimates that about 100,000 people die every year in the United States because of poor health literacy. It truly is a silent and unrecognized epidemic. Doesn't have to be that way, though, right? I mean, wouldn't it be better to, you've heard this adage, to teach people how to fish, rather than just giving them fish? Well, that is so true in healthcare, even more so. We've proved it that if you make a bet on human nature, people will make better decisions when you give them easy to access healthcare information, and it's also true with health literacy. So what is health literacy? Health literacy is the ability to obtain, process, and analyze health information and make appropriate health decisions based on that. It's much more than just the ability to read. You've got to take that information, internalize it, and then decide if it makes sense in your own life, and then make decisions based on that. But what happens specifically, or more specifically, when people have poor health literacy? Well, it's been shown that they are less compliant with their medications. We saw a discussion on that earlier today. They're more likely to have a delay in care. So think about something as simple as a urinary tract infection where a $5 antibiotic could take care of that problem. Well, with a delay in care, that bacteria can move up the ureter and infect the kidney and get into the bloodstream and have serious implications for the patient, but also cost thousands of dollars to take care of. It's also been shown that people with health literacy even have difficulty just describing their symptoms to their providers. The U.S. Department of Education did a study, the National Assessment of Adult Literacy, and only 12% of the U.S. population is health literate. That's a really dismal number, right? I mean, it's really low. And for certain subsets of the population, it's much worse. People that are over 65, people that have immigrated into this country, and minorities. When you dive down into the research and look at it, 9% of the white respondents scored at the very lowest level of health literacy. That number goes up to 20 to 40% for blacks and Hispanics, and for the Medicaid population, it's over 30%. So you can see certain subsegments of the population do much worse in health literacy. So the iTriage team started thinking about, well, what else does 12% represent in the US population? It's the number of people that are afraid of balloons. There's actually a term, globophobia. The number of people that thought the world was going to end on 12/21/12. Now, that those are humorous, and it sort of gives you an idea of how small that number is, but it still reflects how abysmal that 12% of health literate Americans are. So, why should you care? Most of you are involved in healthcare and with health systems. One is the people that have poor health literacy have a much higher readmission rate. They're much more likely to use the emergency department and much more likely to be admitted. And once they're admitted to the hospital, they're much more expensive to take care of, to the tune of about $930 per day extra. So it's incredibly significant. Let's just look at that emergency department problem. There's about 130 million emergency department visits in the US per annum. It's actually going up with the latest healthcare reform. There's been a significant bump, and it'll continue to do that. But about 40% of those are estimated to be avoidable. And by that, we mean it could go to that same visit for the same quality of care could go to an urgent care, retail clinic, or primary care doctor. When you start looking at the difference between seeing somebody for something relatively simple in an emergency department versus an urgent care clinic, the delta in cost is around $700. You start doing the math, this is a $40 to $50 billion problem, this acute care problem alone, and poor health literacy contributes to that. When you look at more globally, the Institute of Medicine study, that $750 to $765 billion is wasted every year in healthcare. 27% of that is unnecessary services. 17% of that is inefficient care. when they started slicing and dicing that and analyzing the information, they realized that there was an estimation of somewhere between $106 and $238 billion wasted every year because of poor health literacy. To put that sort of number in perspective, that's the amount it would take to be able to fund health insurance for the 47 million people that are uninsured. So, it's a massive number. Luckily, the flip side is also true. When people are more health literate, studies have shown they cost less to take care of. There's a health affairs study last year that showed that when patients understood their medications and conditions, just those two things, compared to a group that didn't, they cost 8% less to take care of throughout the entire year. And for certain subsets of the for certain people with chronic diseases, like asthma, 21% less. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, think about it, right? If you have an asthmatic that understands their condition, they know when to use their inhaler, their nebulizer, when to call their doctor, and are going to have less crises, less emergency department visits, and less admissions. So it makes sense. It would be easy to blame the patient here, wouldn't it? That they don't care, they're not motivated, but I don't believe in that. I think it's a learned response. Medicine for so long has been paternalistic and prescriptive. It didn't involve the patient. You're all in healthcare, most of you, and I bet you the great majority of you, every single one of you has been disadvantaged by the healthcare system, being made to wait because, and not even knowing why you're waiting, not even sure if the medication or the test they just ordered for you is the right one, or even if you're seeing the right provider or even in the right type of facility. Is that what it sounds like sometimes when your provider's talking to you? Unfortunately, I think that's what some of my patients have heard when I was talking to them. All of us, if we're going to beat this poor health literacy, we have to be committed to speaking in plain language. Get away from medical jargon. Medical terminology is very efficient when we're talking to other providers, but it's really disadvantages the patient. We need to slow down and make sure that patients understand what we're telling them. And for those key things that you really need them to know, have them repeat that back. So like in the emergency department, there's always like 3 things I wanted to tell you. You need to come back if these 3 things happen, right? Those are the most important things. That's what you need to have them repeat back to you. And if we do this, then we can try to avoid being the Snoopy the surgeon. So this is a picture of Dr. Peter Hudson and I. We practiced for over 20 years, saw 50,000 patients, and we watched them struggle in the emergency department, not having the information they needed to make good healthcare decisions. I would see patients, take care of them. Maybe it was something simple. I'd give them their discharge papers, and they'd ask me, "Doctor, could I have gone to an urgent care for this?" Because they knew the emergency department was going to be very expensive. Maybe they were paying out of pocket or using the HSA fund. Flip side of that was also true. We get ambulances from urgent cares all around us with really serious problems, heart attacks, strokes, bowel obstructions, because people self-selected those locations because they knew they were cheaper and they knew they didn't want to go to the emergency department because they were paying out of pocket. Again, information asymmetry. So we built iTriage to help people understand their symptoms, their conditions, and then where's the right place to go. We like to say there's a face behind every feature in iTriage. We're very interested in patient engagement. Every single person here probably is. And one really interesting and useful structure or framework of looking at that is the B.J. Fogg behavioral model. He runs the Stanford Persuasive Technology Lab. And he talks about if you want a behavior to happen, you need a trigger, ability, and motivation to happen at the same time. Smartphones are unbelievably capable of doing this. So think about the asthmatic again. Let's say you want them to learn how to use their inhaler. You send them a text. Within the text is an embedded link. All they have to do is touch the link. So the text is a trigger. You've given them high ability because now all they do is touch the link and it opens up on their phone. They can do it when they're driving home on the train, on the bus, waiting for their car to be fixed. And then you can throw an incentive in there. There may be intrinsic motivation because they just want to know more about their disease, or an extrinsic motivation, and you can add an incentive in there, a gift certificate, or points to lower premium. So again, very, very, trigger, ability, motivation increases the likelihood of getting the right behavior. But I think we all can improve our practice. We all, all the touch points, every single touch point within the system should be a teachable moment. We should try to educate patients to defeat that poor health literacy. Get away from the medical jargon. Ask them to repeat it back. One of the really key things is use different channels, right? Some people want to, communicate by email, some by phone, some by person, some by text. So use different channels to be able to communicate with them. And then encourage them to bring a caregiver or bring a family with them because, 4 ears are always better than 2. Here's an example of this next slide of a provider who is doing an excellent job of trying to fight this health literacy problem and improve communication with their patients.
Hi, welcome to Seattle Mama Doc. Here's my take on potty training and pull-ups. First of all, potty training is a tough but a great rite of passage for your child, something they can be.
So this is a pediatrician in Seattle, and she found herself, when she started her practice, that she was answering the same questions over and over and over again to parents of newborns. And it wasn't like she was irritated by it, but she thought, this is pretty inefficient. Why don't I tape myself? Very low tech, simple camera. There was no studio or anything. She did it herself and then put them up on YouTube. So she started with the 12 most common, frequently asked questions, put it on YouTube. Anybody that came in that had, was a parent of a newborn, she made sure they got the link. And all her staff did that as well. She saw her patients starting to download this, use the information, doing higher views, thanking her for doing it. Other providers started doing that. She has a much slicker, you go to Seattle Mama Doc now, it's a much slicker and she's had some investment behind it. But at its grassroots, it was something that was really, really cool, right? This is not thousands and thousands of dollars, huge integration. This is something what you could do at grassroots and everybody could do. We even don't like the term health literacy. I think there's some medical jargon in there, right? It doesn't really mean a lot to consumers, so we like to think of it as simplifying healthcare. Make it easy for patients to access information, to understand the information, and to act on it. And then we'll get the appropriate behaviors we want to. And hopefully, we can fight this silent epidemic of poor health literacy that's killing 100,000 people a year, and at the same time, achieve the triple aim of lower cost, higher quality, and better care. Thank you.